Shalom. I'm going to do a topic called this man Pontius Pilate. He's known as the English-speaking world as Pontius Pilate, was the fifth prefect of the Roman province of Judea from AD 2636 CE, and he is best known as the judge at Jesus' trial and the man who authorized the crucifixion of Jesus. That's what they say. It's Pontius Pilate. This guy, this character, was he real? Because you got many people talk about Pontius Pilate. They don't realize that man was one of the guys that crucified. They say Jesus. They say he was a black guy and things like that. Well, I want to read something about Pontius Pilate. It says, was the fifth governor of the Roman province of Judea. You know, they conquered Rome. They conquered Jerusalem, named it Palestina, known as Paulina Capitolina. That was a Roman name. His rule began in 26 CE and lasted until early in 37 CE. Josephus' Antiquities 18.32F to 35 and 89. That's the pages. And here's the province. I'm going to read the province of him. It says, when Herod died, when Herod I died in 4 BCE. It says, it should say when Herod died in 4 BCE, but it said when I died. Augustus upheld his will and divided the kingdom between three of Herod's surviving sons. Antipas was Alatode, Galilee, and Parad, whilst Philip was given Bantania, Trachonitis, or Ararantis, and certain parts of Zeno around Panias, or Altarea, but both were given the title Tetrarch, literally the rule of the fourth part of the kingdom, but the remainder, amounting to half of the kingdom, and conspiring of Idumea. That's talking about Edom, the Edomites. It's talking about who the Edomites, the kingdom, and conspiring of all Idumea. That's in Greek. That means the Edomites, red people. Judea and Samaria was given to Archelaus with the title Eknarch. See Josephus' war, and it talks about that, talking about the Edomites and they're at the time, the sins of Esau. It says 10 years later, the combination of the dynastic intrigue amongst the Herodons, the Roman expansionist policies in the Near East, perhaps Archelaus' brutality against led to Augustus' intervention in Judea affairs. Archelaus was exiled and his territory transferred into a Roman province. That's what they said, Roman province. Although it includes Samaria and Idumea. Idumea is another name for Edom. That's in Greek. It means Idumea, like the land of Edom, the land of Idumea. That's just another name for Esau. His name is Red, and then they call him Edom. So Edom means red. Adawam in the Hebrew means red. That's an Edomite. But the new province was known simply as Judea. The year was 6 CE. See Josephus' War 2.1111 Antiquities, and then you go on there. And the works are by Goldman and Millar below. But Judea was formerly a third-class imperial province. And see Strabo Geography on 17.3, 25 and 17, 840. That's the point in it. Talk about the pages. But these provinces, which were few in the number, tended to be those which were least important in the terms of expanse of revenue. Often they were territories in which the indigenous population, they say, presented particular problems, but the governors of these provinces were drawn from the equation, rank, and commanded only auxiliary troops. Though technically independent, the new province was to a large extent under the guidance of the powerful and strategically important neighboring province of province of Syria. The Syria legate. They said Syria. They say, okay, did I read the governors drawn from the province equation rank and commanded only auxiliary troops? I read that, and technically independent to the new province with a large extent the guidance of the powerful, strategic, important neighbors of neighboring province of Syria. So okay, I read that, and the Syrian legate of a man of consular standing had 3 Roman legions at its disposal, to which a 4th was added after 18 CE. Tactus, Annals 4.5. He could be relied on to intervene with military support in the times of crisis, and could be called upon as an attributor by either the Judean or governor or the people of the need arose. Aside from the brief reign of Herod Agrippa 41-44 CE, Judea continued as the Roman province from 6 CE until the outbreak of the Jewish revolt. They say the Edomite revolt. That's what they should say, but they use the term Jew. Those are the descendants of Esau. In 66 CE, its borders remained unchanged throughout the first period of the Roman rule, but underwent some alterations in the second, i.e. 44 and 66 CE. It says, see Josephus War, the Antiquities. There's things like that. The province of Judea was extremely small. In its first place, to which Pilate's governorship belongs, it measures only approximately 160 km north to south and 70 km west to east. Yet, despite its size, the population of the province came from ethnically diverse groups. And it says Jews, Samaritans, and pagans. That's what they say, Jews and Samaritans and pagans. That's not our people. When anytime that says Jew in this timeline, we was in total captivity. So we're known as the Hebrew Israelites. They Hebrew Edomites. They call themselves Jews. They are Jews, but they're really descendants of Esau, the Edomites. So it's telling you in this thing right here, and it says evansville.edu, and it's an article about Pontius Pilate. It says the Eclat Initiative of Pontius Pilate. That's what I'm reading. It says the latest group, this last group were located particularly in the pagan cities of Caesarea and Sebasti or something like that, to a certain degree. To the province had 2 capital cities. The traditional capital of Jerusalem continued as the focus of Jewish religious life, means Judaism. Jewish religion, that equals Judaism. So they created Judaism. With this, the governor reside in Caesarea together with his troops. And towards transforming the city into Rome administrative headquarters on occasion, the governor would move to Jerusalem, particularly during festivals, both to keep the peace and to the criminal's case. The governor, it says the governor, rank as the customary and relative unimportant to the imperial province. All the governors of Judea appear to have been drawn from the equation rank. The only exception to this appeared to have been Felix. The comments of both Tactus and Suetonius on his low highest burst suggest for the appointment of a free man was unprecedented, thereby indirectly confirming that others were Equatius Tactus of the Sectunius, Claudius 28, and Equationarians formed the middle rank of the Roman nobility. They said the Roman nobility, as you can see, and under Augustus there provided suitable men for a variety of initial public office, ranged from military commands to the collection of taxes and jury work. Duties. Rome had a few official in its province. An imperial province would be administered by only the governor and a small number of the personal staff. The governor's concern, therefore, had to be limited to initial, principally, the maintenance of the law and order. the judicial matters and the collection of taxes to enable him to carry out his duties. The governor possession of imperium, or the supreme administrative power in province. That's the duties. But law and order, the primary responsibility of the governor of Judea was the military. The crucial aspect of the governor's task is emphasized by his title, which, in the period before Agrippa, its reign 41 to 44 CE, was perfect, and Profectius Apriscos, or something like that, and appointed of men to the military prefecture, shows the determination of early emperors and hold on newly subjugated territory to bring the native inhabitants firmly under the Roman control. Under Claudius, however, perfect was changed to a civilian title, and which has been designed to underscore the success of the pacification process. This change explains the confusion and confusion in the literary sources regarding the governor's title. For a full essay, survey see 11, 45, and 48. That's what you can see in the parentheses in here if you read this. The governors of Judea only have auxiliary troops at their disposal. These appear to have been the descendants of the Herodin troops. So Herodin was an Edomian. They were Edomites, by the way, drawn primarily from the Shezra and the Saspate, and they mounted to 5 infantry cohorts and 1 cavalry regiment scattered throughout the province. 1 cohort was permanently posted into Antonia fortress in Jerusalem. Judicial matters. Judicial, they would say. It's court system. Judicial branches, that's where it came from. The governor possessed supreme judicial authority within the province. He would presumably have a system assize to which case could be brought and receive a hearing. The precise division of judicial competence between the governor and the native courts vary in different provinces. There is not enough evidence to determine whether or not a Jewish courts could inflict the death penalty at this period. Scholarly opinion is sharply divided on this issue. The Roman governor would doubtlessly wish to maintain his jurisdiction over the political offenses, but it is not impossible that Jewish courts were able to execute when their own law had been contravened, and collections of taxes. That's what it says right here. It says Rome relied on large extent of the help of the local authorities and private agents in collections of taxes, like the Jesuit order, like the agents, like they have today. Supervising these was the governor acting as the emperor's personal financial agent, like they have nowadays. The heaviest of these taxes was the tributum by the 1st century CE. This was primarily a tax on provincial land, and the amount of the tribute required from each person was worked out by means of census. Only one census appeared to have been conducted in Judea, that organized by Quirinius at the formation of the new province in 6 CE. Josephus' Antiquities, you can read that. I'll skip on down. It says general administration. In accordance with general Roman practice, the entire day-to-day administration of the nation, it was a nation state, like the guy said in the ancient Moorish Empire. If you watch that video, check that video out. I put that in my favorites. Check that out. He showed the difference. Was left largely to the Jewish high priests. Atrocities in Jerusalem. The Romans expected them to uphold imperial interests within the local atrocities. Could expect their own privilege and positions be safeguarded. and by Rome in return. The Roman governors recognized the political importance of the high priesthood and sought to keep a tight control over it, appointing and disposing high priests at will. And it says Pontius Pilate right here. I'll read it. Pontius Pilate. Nothing is known of Pilate prior to his arrival in Judea. Advance at the time depended on the patronage of man's chances of promotion to the public official, depended on connections and influences into the imperial court. In all probability, Pilate was helped to office by powerful patrons, perhaps even Tiberius himself or his powerful friend Sage Jonas. The common suggestion that this man encouraged Pilate to openly pursue anti-Jewish policies rests only on one tedious passage in Filios, Lagadios, and Guiam, and 159 and 160, and cannot be sustained. Seeing, hinting, and that's which you can read. Those are books in the parentheses. It's so anti-Jewishism. That's what they say. Pilate may well have the previous military experience before coming to province, but the records are completely lacking. Most governors ruled over Judea between 2 and 4 years. Pilate and his predecessors, Gratus, however, both governed the province from approximately 11 years. This is probably not an indication. But it's probably not an indication that these two governors were especially competent, since Josephus tells us that the part of Tiberius's provincial policies was to keep a man in office for a long time. You can read the Antiquities 170 to 173 in his book, Antiquities of Josephus. I'm familiar with the book. It tells you that. In general, Pilate's terms of the official corresponds to general picture of Judean governors. Sketch above. 2 points, however, distinguish Pilate's governorship to some extent from the others. The first is lack of the Syrian legate for the first 6 years of Pilate's terms of office. Tiberius appointed Alinus Alemia to most, but kept him in Rome, presumably trying out a form of centralized government. It said lack of Syrian legate, but I read that centralized government. But this need not have been altogether successful, suspended legates of the government from the Syrian capital of Antioch. And then you can read that, and it says the implication of this earlier passage of his governorship of Pilate had no legate on the hand in Syria, on whom he could call in emergency. Unlikely his predecessors, Pilate could not rely on the immediate support of the legions in case of unrest. This would mean that Pilate was more than usually dependent on his auxiliaries, and that any potential uprising had to be put down quickly before it could escalate and change to a covenant of the high priest. And this was presumably not out any wish to respect Jewish sensitives and things like that. It says second, the features of Pilate's governorship is that unlikely his predecessor Gratus, who changed the high priest 4 times in his 11 years, Pilate made no change to the incumbent of the high priesthood. This was presumably not out of any wish to respect Jewish sensitivities, but rather than because he found it in Gratus last appointed, and Caiaphas and a man would be relied to support on Roman interests, could command some respect amongst the people. They said primary source of information for Pilate's governorship. These fall into 2 groups: archaeological, archaeological and literary. Archaeological, we have to two archaeological links with Pilate. The first inscription found on the block of the limestone of Caesarea Maritima in 1961. Much of the inscription is mutilated, but the following letters are still visible. It says S. Terebrum, and things in Rome. Although complete restrictions, and it goes on down. I don't have to read all this, but let's talk about that. Oh, I'm going to read Josephus. I might as well read it. Although complete restrictions of the inscription. I'm going to see how much time I got. Hold on. Are tentative and extremely hypothetical in nature. Three things are evident. The first is that the second line refers to Pontius Pilate, given the first of the three names in the mutilated left side. Secondly, his title is clearly Perfectus Judea, Perfect of Judea. Thirdly, the inscription appears to have been attached to the building known as Tiberium. This was presumably either the temple or the secular building dedicated to Tiberius. And it says the second archaeological link with with Pilate's number of bronze is coins struck by the perfect on the three successive years: 29 CE, 30 CE, 30 CE, 31 CE, and 31 and 32 CE. Each deficits distinctly Jewish design on one side along with a pagan symbol on the other. The first shows their ears of barley or something like that. Barley on the obverse and the spimulum, the sacrificial vessel or wine bowl, they would say. On the reverse, the second and third both contain the same design with ludus or something like that. It's in Greco-Roman style writing. It says in Acurus croc, the staff or wand. On the obverse, the wreath or something like that, wreath with berries on the reverse. This blending of Jewish and pagan designs may stem from an attempt to integrate the Jewish people further into the empire. That's what they did, probably. That the coins were not generally regarded as an offensive is apparent from the fact that the coins would have been used unto Agrippa's reign, and he only changed the design in his second year. For further details, see my article on Pilate's coins referred below. That's what they say. And this number 2, it says literal sources, specifically events from Pilate's governorship, are recorded in writings of the 6th, 1st centuries authors of Josephus, Philo, and the 4 Christian evangelists who wrote the New Testament. They wrote the 4 Gospels. That was Philo, and he wrote the whole book basically, and Josephus kind of predicated to it. So they wrote the good spell, the Gospels of the New Testament. It was written by the sons of Esau, by the way. Josephus, by far our greatest amount of information comes from the Jewish writer Flavius, is famous from the information from the Jewish writer Flavius Josephus, known as Titus Flavius Josephus, by the way, who composed his 2 great works, The Antiquity of the Jews and The Jewish War. Towards the end, the 1st century, important as Josephus' accounts are, however, they can only be used with certain amount of caution. Apologetic and radical motives have shaped each narrative to a large extent, particularly his desire to impress on the other nations, the futile of the revolt against Rome. His attempt to stress the antiquity of Judaism, it should be called Judaism. They call it Judaism, known as Judaism. That's what it should call. And his endeavor of the antiquities, since Esau created that religion, by the way, to put up some blame for the Jewish revolt on the Roman governors of Judea. For information on Josephus' bias, see particularly the works of Rajak and Bilad or something like that, in column below. In all, Josephus describes 4 incidents involving Pilate. His early work, The Jewish War, describes Pilate's introduction of iconic standards in Jerusalem, they would say. In his construction of the aqueduct for the city, the Antiquities repeats these two stories with slightly different emphasis and adds two more. The story of the execution of Jesus of Nazareth, our people never taught that, by the way, and the incident involving Samaritans, which eventually led to Pilate removal from the province. The standards, and it's in war. You can read 169 and 174. In the Antiquities, you can read 55 and 59 on those pages. Josephus accused Pilate of deliberately bringing standards containing offense effigies and Caesar into Jerusalem by night. The Antiquities account goes so far as to accuse Pilate deliberately wanting to subvert Jewish practice, seeing what had happened to Jews, happened to the Jewish people, flocked to Caesarea and surrounding Pilate's house for 5 days, imploring him to remove the standards. When Pilate eventually encircled the people with his troops, they declared that they were willing to die rather than see the ancestral laws contravene, amazed at their devotion. Pilate had the standards removed. Josephus had clearly allowed his radical concerns to influence this story, particularly the description of Pilate's delivery for provocation on this unfleeing devotion to their ancestral religion. Yet it may be possible to piece together something of the historical event behind the narrative. Due to its position at the beginning of the accounts in both the war and the Antiquities, most scholars assume that the incident took place early on Pilate's terms of office, perhaps as early winter 26 CE. A squadron could not be separate from his standards. If the new standards were brought into Jerusalem, that they meant that an entirely new squadron was being stationed in Jerusalem, one which had not been used in the city previously. As a materially perfect, Pilate's interest would have been in the troops themselves and their strategic positioning. The particular emblems out their standards would not have been particularly important as a new governor. Pilate may not have been realized that this particular cohort would cause offense in Jerusalem because of its standards, or if it has been warned, it might have been absurd to him that the troops which would have been deployed the Caesarea could not be moved in Jerusalem. The accounts gives the imprisonment of a new governor, and anxious to take no nonsense from the people he's to govern, the fact that he was willing to recognize the position he did eventually change the troops shows a certain amount of prudence and concern to avoid unnecessary hostilities. The aqueduct war, or something like that. Again, the act against Josephus accused Pilate of deliberately attempting to arouse hostilities, this time by using temple money to build an aqueduct for Jerusalem. The matters came to the head during the visit of Pilate to Jerusalem, when the people riot. Many were killed. As various previous incident, Josephus' bias is evident, particularly in his description of Pilate's motivations to the building of the aqueduct. The aqueduct for the city was surely a commendable undertaking, one which would have benefited the inhabitants enormously. The point of conflict seemed to have been around the use of temple money, or korbanos or something like that, or korbanos in the parentheses, or if you read this on this article. For the project, Pilate must have had cooperation, whether voluntary or forced, or Cyphus or something like that, and then the temple authorities, whose duty is to administrate the treasury. If it had been taken the money by the aggression, Josephus would surely have mentioned it. Some light might be thrown on the matters by the Sheikh 4.2, which allowed they use surplus money from the treasury to use all the city's needs. The dating of this ruling is uncertain, but it's possible that the similar allowance was made in the 1st century. If Pilate's use for surplus money for improving cities' water supply and would have presumably have permitted what had led to hostilities, however, was if Pilate had begun to demand more than the surplus for his building venture. The war's use of the verb askananalines or something like that in worthless, perhaps over exaggerated, may imply that Pilate began to demand ever increasing amounts, draining temple supplies and treating the treasure as his own personal fiscus. The date of this incident is unknown. The execution of Jesus of Nazareth, they say, this passage recorded only the antiquities and generally referred to as the testimony of Flavianum. Scholars are generally agreed that it has suffered at the hands of the later Christian interpreters. They say Christian interpreters. That originally wording is how now lost. Given to context, the original text of the probable record another disturbance in the time of Pilate Pilate centering on Jesus or his followers after his death. As it now stands, the testimony of Flavianum adds little to our picture to the historical Pilate. He is shown to work closely with the Jewish hierarchy, that's what they say, to eliminate a common threat. It may also be significant that he's only the Messianic leader executed, not his followers, but a fact which may show a dislike for excessive violence. This event is usually dated to either 30 or 33 CE on the basis of the astronomical and the calendrical information derived from the Gospels, the good spell, the Gospels, because known as good spell, like God spell, like God means good, but it's a spell. They put you in a trance. That's what they put our people in the trance, by the way. And I'm going to read the rest of it. It says Sumerian uprising, Pilate, and return to Rome. Talk about all the uprising and that things like that. It has Philio Alexandria. Most of y'all know about that, the Gospels and all this. I might put this in my file, Biblical Truth file, the Pontius Pilate. Yeah, and you know, this is Pontius Pilate. I just want to expound on Pontius Pilate, and that's information I got. I ain't gonna do a part 2, but most of you can read this for yourself. This is about Pontius Pilate, and that's what I'm gonna name this video. And the information I got is called the ECLO Initiative, and you can find this at the evansville.eu. Just type in Pontius Pilate and you can see it in the search box in Google, wherever your search has got in Bing. So with that, like it says in front, it says, Yahuwah, all your words are true, all your laws are righteous, laws are eternal. Psalms 119, 160. And keep his commandments and his statutes and judgments. Mainly keep the commandments, because we're going to do the statutes and laws because we have this book, the knowledge, book of remembrance. Look upon thy name. And who will make up his jewels that make a man to spare his own son that served him. Malachi 3 and 17. I just quoted 3:16 in Malachi, and all the way down to the 17th verse. And so believe in the prophet, so shall we prosper. He is the first and the last, and beside him there is no savior. So may Yahuwah bless you many times. All I want to say is shalom.